Free Agency Special, presented by Kia.
It's craziness here. It's free agency day. This is what happens. Welcome to those of you joining us on ESPN2 while NFL Live is over on ESPN1. Thank you to those of you who made the jump over with us. And I think we fixed Dave McMenamin's microphone. So we've got Ramona Shelburne, Dave, Kendrick Perkins, who stayed with us from ESPN. We are also going to welcome in Basketball Hall of Famer Chris Bosh. I'm going to just keep saying that over and over, Chris. And, I can't wait to see you with that jacket in just a couple months. We've got a lot of guests, too, throughout the next 4 hours. We are taking you through the beginning of NBA free agency and beyond, as they say. So we're in the middle of a conversation about the Lakers off season. And, Chris, I do want to get you in here because they don't have a lot of cap flexibility after the deals allotted to LeBron, Anthony Davis, and, Russell Westbrook, who just joined them. So you have been in this position with the Heat where you guys had to add little pieces around the edges, use vet minimums after a lot of the salary went to you guys with the Heat. So how do you think the Lakers should approach this, and how much work does LeBron or Anthony Davis have to do calling guys saying, I know it's going to be less money, but will you come play with us?
Well, I mean, free agency is all about working the phones. I think the presidents and GMs have their say-so, but, you definitely want to have a say-so if you're a player yourself. And I think that's a lot. It's very powerful if you get a call from somebody wanting to play with you, especially when you're going to have to take less money. But in the Lakers instance, they're the Lakers. They're always chasing championships. And anytime you're in the business of championships, this is the flexibility or the maneuvering or the finesse that you have to have. They're going to have to surround all of the talent that they have right now with Mark, with their big three, and make sure they get shooting around them. I think we all know that LeBron, he has his style that he likes to have shooters around him. We all know what Anthony Davis brings. He's going to bring the muscle in the paint that they need. But Russell Westbrook is also going to be a force in the paint. He's going to play his game and play full court. They're going to have to surround those guys with shooters and, hopefully get some bargain prices of them. And I know there's plenty of guys out there who will join the Lakers, and we'll see what happens today.
Well, look, I'm glad CB brought up shooting because I'm tired of everybody overemphasizing spacing and shooting, because we just saw in this year's finals the way that Giannis dominated. The Milwaukee Bucks did not shoot well from the three-point line at all. But as long as you have superstar power, you could get the job done, right? In the finals, it's all about your superstars rising to the occasion. We saw Caldwell Pope. We saw Danny Green. We saw those guys struggle when the Lakers made their first run. Now, I get it. If you could go out and get a J.J. Reddick on the vet minimum, then you got to go do that. If you can go out and get a Carmelo Anthony on the vet minimum, then you also got to go do that. I just feel like when it comes down to LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, and Anthony Davis, this has been a plan that they have been thinking about for a very long time. We know all of these guys are close friends. We know that LeBron James is getting to a point of his time in his career where he's going to be willing to make the necessary sacrifices, meaning maybe having to play the power forward position. Anthony Davis having to make the sacrifice of playing the center position and playing and letting Russell Westbrook lead the charge. We know that Russell Westbrook could also be the facilitator on the team. Last year, he led the league in assists. He wants to get others involved. So I think when you have this much star power and you have a guy like Anthony Davis that could control the paint on both ends of the floor, then, yeah, you could fill in the gaps a little bit. But with those three players, I like my chances.
Well, it is interesting, the gaps they do have to fill in. Dave, Perk just mentioned J.J. Reddick. Who do you think they are targeting?
Wow. Well, they're targeting a lot because they need to. There's 11 open roster spots as they head into free agency. It could be less if they retain some of their own guys. Alex Caruso, Taylor Horton-Tucker, they've already tendered a qualifying offer for THT that would lend us to believe that they're going to match whatever comes on the outside as a restricted free agent. But then you have the mid-level exception, which isn't all that much money because they're a taxpayer, only $5.9 million. So you'll be asking some of these people that could get more money on the outside market to come, and the veteran minimum. And so they, Perk, you're great, but three-point shooting is a huge part of today's game. They were 21st in the league in threes last year, and Perk mentioned J.J. Reddick. That's a name. Wayne Ellington, a former Laker. There's another name. Trevor Ariza, Avery Bradley. And some of these guys, the good part about it, they can shoot the three, but they're not a one-dimensional player. They can provide the defensive intensity or certainly the veteran acumen that you bring to the group. But they got a lot of spots to fill, and it's going to be really interesting to see, do they target one player with this mid-level, or do they split it up and just say, we can offer you a little bit more than veteran minimum?
Well, it's certainly become more complicated just in terms of getting the right skill sets on the floor with Russ coming there. Obviously, the big stars felt like that was the move because we know they all got together. But, Ramona, this is not the first time Russell Westbrook has tried to come to L.A., right? You had such an interesting detail this morning. Can you share that with our friends here?
Yeah, well, I mean, what's interesting, this Russ move we've all talked about. I feel like I've been on this show several times. We've talked about it. But in the summer of 2019, when we were all talking about Kawhi coming to the Lakers, the Clippers are going back to the Lakers.
Would he bring someone with him?
Yeah, would he go there alone? One of the guys who took matters into his own hands was Russell Westbrook. Called up Kawhi and said, hey, I'm from LA, you're from LA. Is there a way we can make this work? Kawhi wasn't all that interested in that.
That's amazing.
Kawhi ends up calling Paul George and saying, hey, I'd rather go with you, but you should just know that I had a conversation with your guy, so if you don't want to...
So Kawhi basically said to Paul George, who was teammates with Russell Westbrook, and we remember the whole press conference and the concert and the whole thing, it's going to be the two of them. Kawhi called PG and said, hey, I don't know if you know this, Russ is looking to leave, maybe you should leave and come with me instead.
Here's what's, it's not so much that Russ was looking to leave. Russ was just, hey, what do you think? We're from LA. Could this work? It was just one of those thought bubble conversations. The same kind of thought bubble conversation Russ has been having with LeBron James for the past couple of weeks. The conversations he's had with Bradley Beal over the last couple of weeks. Line, let's do the same thing. This was just a conversation. It wasn't like, hey, let's act on this.
Well, but Kawhi acted.
Look, Kaiser Sose over there, okay?
Right?
Kawhi is a mastermind, and it was. I'd heard about this for a little while. I finally was able to confirm it up, but it does speak to the amount that Westbrook has been trying to get back to Los Angeles for a couple of years here. And I think what really sealed this for the Lakers, they had the trade for Buddy Hield. They woke up that morning thinking they were doing the trade for Buddy Hield. But when Russ saw those reports of how serious the Buddy Hield trade was, he's been talking to LeBron the whole time. He kind of knew, hey, it didn't work out the last time, but if I'm ever going to get back to my hometown, this is the time. So Russ and his agent, Thad Fouché, who, by the way, 3 trades in 3 years, and everywhere you leave, they send a press release saying, thank you for your efforts. It seems pretty well handled. Went to Tommy Shepard and said, look, we're happy to play here. We like it here in Washington, but if there's a way to get back to Los Angeles, if there's a trade with Los Angeles, today would be the day to do it because it's the draft. And he knew this would be the moment that Washington could get the most value for him. So if he wasn't going to be there, he wanted to do right by the Wizards, right by Brad Beal. But also, if there's a way to get back to his hometown, make that call.
There we go. Well, with him there, that changes the landscape in Los Angeles once again. And we know there are 2 teams here that have a bit of a rivalry with each other that's been ratcheted up over the last couple seasons. So I want to talk Clippers as well. It was their first ever conference finals appearance this past season. Dave, what expectations do you have for the Clippers this summer now that a rehabbing Kawhi, he's a free agent? We do expect him to Ibaka opted into the last year of his deal, so being an LA insider here, what do you expect?
The Ibaka move is kind of their free agent acquisition, considering they didn't get to have him in the playoffs during that run that got so far. But, what are they going to do with Reggie Jackson, who was such a huge part of their playoff run? Nick Batum, another guy hitting the free agent market, who was really a nice signing for them, unexpected surprise, I think, for a lot of folks. So they got to look in-house, I think, before they start looking how they're going to fill out the rest of the roster. Yeah,
the Clippers have been really active trying to say, we're not going to just mail it in this year just because Kawhi's not there. They still want to win. They still have a team that was in the Western Conference Finals and had a really good season.
But a lot want to win, too.
Yeah, and I think they have been active trying to find somebody who maybe there's a fit with somebody who can come in for 1 year. There's a big role for them here in Los Angeles because Kawhi most likely is going to miss this year. The entire year. So if that's a great role for somebody who needs a showcase, who can play alongside a team that is a tailor-made playoff team that went all the way to the Western Conference Finals. I think they keep Reggie Jackson. Nick Batum has interest elsewhere around the league. Watch the Warriors on him. Reggie Jackson is just a question of how much money does he get paid. I think they keep him, but at what cost? But the Clippers have been very aggressive, just kind of scouring the trade market and seeing what they can do. Now, what pieces do they have to offer?
Right.
They have Luke Kennard. They have Ivica Zubac. I don't know what you get in return on those.
Right. Well, Chris, I wanted to ask you, look, Reggie Jackson, we know, has that close relationship with Paul as well, so I would expect him to stay. We talked about them all through the Western Conference Finals, though, Chris. How competitive Leonard, Paul George, basically what they have, and as these guys on set here were just talking, some other players, if not around the margins, at least we're not expecting some, like, incredible, crazy, top-level free agent to come there.
Well, I mean, you know, the position that they're in now, I think first or second round would be a success for them. With Kawhi Leonard, of course, you're talking about a championship contender. And I think the first thing that they have to do is make sure they sign Reggie Jackson back. I think after his performance, his ability to step up in late game situations to be clutch, and the way he was shooting the ball from three, I mean, you know, technically we had never seen anything like that before. Right. So, you know, just the way he was able to turn it on and seeing him and Paul George having that chemistry, I think that's very important. But overall, I think the Clippers, yeah, I agree. They do have to look in-house. They're right there, you know, and they just have to continue to retool what they have. I'm sure that they'll continue to look for trade markets. Like it was said earlier, who knows what they can get back. But the way that they're looking at the playoff performance last year, they didn't have two guys pretty much out of their starting five, and they were still able to have some success. So if I'm in the Clippers' shoes, I'm just really looking at this as bringing Reggie Jackson back. It might be too competitive of a market to get Nick Batum back, but with the core that they have and hopefully them signing Kawhi back, they can think about the future and think about how they're going to get over the hump and hopefully eventually win a championship.
Rachel, one note from our colleague Bobby Marks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Go ahead, Perk.
No, go ahead, Ramon. I want to hear what you got to say.
No, one note from Bobby last night. When Kawhi opted out of his deal, it also took out the disabled player exception that the Clippers could have applied for him. So that's a $9.5 million disabled player exception that they could have filed for. Now, I don't know if they would have done that in the sense that if there's a chance he comes back, maybe leave that door open. But that was a salary piece that they could have used to sign somebody or trade for somebody that they now no longer have.
Well, Perk, I was interested in the other side of that piece of news, though, that your friend Serge Ibaka has opted in. So he will be on that team next year, as you talk about how competitive they might be even without Kawhi.
Well, here's the thing. I was listening to CB, and we're talking about Reggie Jackson. I thought Reggie Jackson really upped his value, and it's about how much money do the Clippers really have to offer Reggie Jackson for him to stay. Because if you look at this point in his career, this is probably Reggie's last opportunity to actually get him a big contract. And when I say a big contract, I'm thinking, you know, something along the lines of over at least $50 million that he done earned himself. So I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at Kawhi Leonard's situation. If he does sign back, from what my understanding is that we're not expecting to see Kawhi this year. So when you look at the Clippers with Paul George, Marcus Morris, even Terrence Mann, the emergence that we saw him and the faith that Ty Lue has in him, obviously the Clippers are going to be in the runners of making the playoffs without Kawhi, but I don't know if they're going to make it past the first round without Kawhi just because of how deep the Western Conference is. You have the Denver Nuggets coming back. If Damian Lillard decides to stay with Portland, obviously they're going to make moves. You have them coming back along with Golden State, the Lakers, the Utah Jazz, the Memphis Grizzlies showed us what they're capable of doing. So it's so many teams that are in the West, including the Dallas Mavericks. Without Kawhi Leonard, I hate to count out Ty Lue, but it's going to be hard for them to, make that leap and get back to where they were this year as far as being in the postseason.
Well, we will be watching all of this, especially from our perch here right across the street from the Staples Center. Perk, Agency Special is live and rolling. I'm Rachel Nichols, joined by Stephen A. Smith, Matt Barnes. We've got Kendrick Perkins waiting for us as well over there in Houston. Hey, Perk, we're going to have a slew of guests stopping by throughout the show, including, of course, Adrian Wojnarowski in just a minute or two. Now, you just watched a recap of how free agency has gone in the past, guys. And if you've watched this show over the years, you know about the trade crank. So if something happens, we got a little bit of adjustment. I do want to make a point here before I pull it. We have a little bit of adjustment because of COVID. We're still all trying to be safe. We can't shoot all that smoke into the air and have all of our little particles moving around. So we've reached a compromise here. Let's take a look. It's virtual. Let's take a look. Here we go. When we hear a trade, we'll do this. There we go. Yeah. Not bad. Still got it.
That's not bad.
Got it. We all make adjustments with COVID.
Production, whoever took her power away, because she was getting out of hand with that thing in previous years, scaring everybody. So thank you, whoever virtualized it.
I do want to give Matt credit, by the way, because when we were setting up for the show, I said, now we won't have the actual smoke here in the studio. Mm-hmm. He said, I can provide some extra smoke if you would like. So, you know.
It works. It works.
Matt, we'll hold off on your kind of smoke just for now. But Stephen A. is obviously very happy we're not showering him with CO2.
Thank you very much.
There we go. All right. Here's what we know so far. I just want to bring you up to date. Zach LaVine said he, quote, just wants his respect when it comes to a potential new deal, an extension with the Bulls as he enters the last season of his 4-year, $78 million contract with Chicago. Brian Windhorst is going to join us later to discuss that. And as first reported by Yahoo Sports, Kawhi Leonard has opted out of his contract. He is now officially a free agent. Now, this is very different from a couple of years ago. Remember, this time, Kawhi recovering from ACL surgery, an injury that kept him out of the Western Conference Finals, could keep him out for a chunk or all of next season. Woj also reporting the Phoenix Suns optimistic they can come to terms with Chris Paul after he chose to opt out of his final year of his contract. Should re-sign in Phoenix as the Heat picked up Goran Dragic's option. That was for more than $19 million. Now, according to Woj, there is a very important reason for that. They intend to use that cap hold as part of a sign and trade deal to try to grab Raptors point guard Kyle Lowry as they position themselves to be the front runners in the Lowry sweepstakes. So, guys, look, it is a lot going on. To join us and discuss all the storylines, our senior insider, Adrian Wojnarowski. Welcome back, Woj. This is a huge day for you. I know you're going to be on your phone most of the afternoon. What is the very latest on the Kyle Lowry situation?
Well, Rachel, I think everything's in place when we hit 6 o'clock Eastern to get moving on a Kyle Lowry deal to the Miami Heat. Goran Dragic, Precious Achiuwa, their first-round pick in Miami last year, a really good young player out of Memphis who I'm told would be part of the Heat's package to the Raptors to try to get the kind of sign and trade offer that would entice the Raptors into helping Kyle Lowry get to the Heat. They don't have the cap space to sign him, but if you incentivize the deal enough with Toronto, I think there's a pathway to a deal, and certainly the motivation for Kyle Lowry to get to Miami to join Jimmy Butler, his good friend, a player who really fits the Heat identity and certainly fits their timeline of win now. So I think everything's in place for Kyle Lowry to be a member of the Miami Heat, perhaps as early as tonight.
Interesting. And look, we were saying when Kyle Lowry was not dealt at the trade deadline, wow, does this mean he's going to leave Toronto for nothing? If they can work out a sign and trade with the Raptors, however, then he won't be leaving, quote, for nothing. So Masai Ujiri coming out with something on that deal, again, like Masai often does. I want to move on to Kawhi Leonard. He also opted out of his deal. Does it appear he will be back with the Clippers? Because one thing we were thinking was maybe he would keep this year and then just work out an extension. Instead, he did do the opt-out.
He did, and I think it's some contractual gymnastics. Listen, he can do any number of things with his deal. He could do a 1+1. He can do a longer deal. He's going to spend this year rehabbing most of the season, if not all of it, coming off that ACL surgery. But the expectation is that he will return to the Clippers. The kind of contract it'll be is unclear, but I think that Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers, certainly the Clippers are proceeding as though he will be back, and how they're planning to handle free agency, handle their cap, knowing that they're going to be minus him this year, but the expectation is he certainly returns at full strength the following year. And who knows, maybe there's a way he can return late in the season in LA.
Well, look, they were very competitive all the way up through the middle of the Western Conference Finals without him, so that has got to give them some good feelings going in there. It's so interesting. We played the clip at the top of the show. It was your voice, Woj, talking about how after he left Toronto, we were in the helicopter car chase part of Kawhi's free agency. None of that this season. Just shows you how fast things move in this league. Yeah. Chris Paul, another huge name. He opted out of his player option for that last year. Does his future still, though, appear to be in Phoenix?
It does, Rachel, and I think both the Suns and Chris Paul are really motivated to get a deal done tonight. They can do a long-term deal, perhaps 3 years. Moving forward, he'll be 37 years old next year in the playoffs, but you saw the high level Chris Paul was still playing at this year, just like Kyle Lowry, mid-30 point guards who are playing, at all-star level later and later into their careers. But I think that the motivation is there, the desire for the Suns and Chris Paul to get a deal done. I believe they will.
And it's interesting, we've talked about some of the players, but there's teams still who are going to have some cap room today, too, whether it's New Orleans, right, the New York Knicks, the Dallas Mavericks just cleared some space. Do we expect any smaller deals with those teams, or do you think that's going to be more in the next few days?
Well, I think you'll see a flurry of action tonight. Certainly the Knicks, they want to keep their own free agents. Nerlens Noel, Alex Burks, Derrick Rose, all players I think they'd like to keep there. If Goran Dragic ends up in Toronto, whether it's a trade or an eventual buyout, I think there'll be a lot of interest in Dallas. Remember, he is really, his relationship with Luka Doncic, both from Slovenia. I think Dragic was really a mentor to him. They share the same agent, Bill Duffy. So I think there's certainly maybe a pathway for Dragic if this sign and trade does go through in Toronto. Either they trade him, and certainly there's other teams who have point guard needs who are going to have great interest in Goran Dragic. So I think that's, something that plays out here over a period of time.
Certainly a point guard kind of feel to this week. Woj, thanks so much. We will be following your Twitter account with bated breath, and we will see and hear from you throughout the day. All right, guys, I want to talk more about Kyle Lowry. He is looking, as Woj says, like he might be a member of the Miami Heat. So, Steven, what do you think that fit is with Miami, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo down there?
I'm not moved.
Really?
I'm not moved. I just have to be honest with you. I'm a fan of Kyle Lowry. He's a champion. Averaged 17 points a game last year. Can shoot in the mid 30% from three-point range. He's definitely an upgrade as far as I'm concerned from a Goran Dragic, from a Kendrick Nunn, who I think's got a lot of promise. I get all of that. Here's the problem. When we last saw you, what happened to you? You got swept. Who was that by? That was by the Milwaukee Bucks. That's not going to be the difference. And that's where I'm coming from. When I think about Kyle Lowry, if he were with the Philadelphia 76ers, because you've got Embiid, if you were able to keep Ben Simmons while you still have him, the Tobias Harrisons of the world, and stuff like that, and he was added to that mix, his experience, his poise, his defensive tenacity, his fervor, he's from that area. I covered them. I actually covered them when I was right for the Philadelphia Inquirer. This dude is a special player, no mistake about it. But in Miami, as they're presently constructed, I don't see him making that big of a deal in terms of, just basically changing the course of their future in that regard. I don't see it.
I definitely think this is an upgrade, and I agree. I still think if they're going to be contenders, they're going to find another piece. And I also think, after hearing Woj speak, they're going to have to throw some more people in that pot. I don't know if Goran Dragic and their rookie from last year is going to be enough to entice Toronto. So they might have to throw one of their shooters in, which I'm sure they don't want to do. But I agree. Kyle Lowry, 35, still very solid, can still production, a great on-the-floor leader, which they need sometimes outside of Jimmy Butler. It's a good fit, but I still feel, the East is with Brooklyn being strong, Milwaukee, the defending champs. Kyle Lowry is going to be one piece to another piece that they're going to need to really contend in the Eastern Conference.
Now, Perk, I know you're always hot on those goons from Miami, as you like to call them. Do you agree with Stephen A. that this isn't quite going to get it done, or do you think maybe this could make them make a stab in the East and be coming out of the East?
I respectfully disagree with Stephen A. And I'm going to say this why. Because one of the most important positions in the NBA is the point guard position. And you're right. He's a huge upgrade from Kendrick Nunn and Goran Dragic. And look, Kyle Lowry is one of the best floor generals in the game today. You have guys like Rajon Rondo, Chris Paul, LeBron James, and Kyle Lowry falls right in that category. Kyle Lowry is going to take pressure away from Jimmy Butler. Now Jimmy Butler don't have to worry about getting others involved and facilitating. He takes that load off where Jimmy only have to worry about getting buckets. And Kyle Lowry has that type of tenacity and that type of spirit where it rubs off on everyone. We saw at times throughout this postseason where Bam went missing, right? And there's only so much you could do as a coach with Eric Spoelstra being on the sideline for us, firing up your guys to bring back that energy, that tenacity. Well, Kyle Lowry is that guy. When you step on the floor with him at any given time, you feel like you have an opportunity to win the game because he's one of the most ultimate competitors that we have in the game today. So I do feel like if Kyle Lowry being added to the Heat as of what they are with Bam and Jimmy Butler, it makes them a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference, hands down.
Well, let me tell you something. First of all, I want to tell you something, Rachel and Matt, that, you know, Kendrick Perkins has been doing a marvelous job all year covering the NBA. And what you have to understand about Kendrick Perkins is he's gotten slick. He's gotten very, very slick. He's learned to get very, very slick. Let me tell you why. I don't recall Matt Barnes saying it was a downgrade. I certainly didn't say it was a downgrade. Matter of fact, we all agree it's an upgrade. What I said is that that's not going to make the difference when you look at the Eastern Conference. In other words, instead of getting swept like they did, you might lose in 6. You might lose in 5 or 6. You don't think that gives
them a round or two?
I don't. No, I'm saying it against that level of competition. Okay. That's what I'm talking about, specifically against the competition. Okay. And then we take into account what Kyle Lowry did. They were in Toronto before Kawhi Leonard arrived, okay? Yeah. And they were winning 58, 59 games, and they were capturing the #1 seed and stuff like that. Yeah. But you know something? DeMar DeRozan, who can ball, who was no scrub, he wasn't any Kawhi Leonard. And once Kawhi Leonard arrived, it's a difference. Why? Because you're 6'8", you're built like a chiseled brick house. You can get to the hole. You got a perimeter shot. You can do a lot of things. And Kyle Lowry's poise, his veteran leadership, his perimeter shooting, his ability to draw offensive fouls became more pronounced because of who you have with you. You ain't going to have that with him in Miami. That's the problem.
Well, go ahead, Burke.
Well, you see how Stephen A. telling the world that I tend to get slick. He also do the same thing, and I catch him in ways as well, right? So think about this. You want to know what happened to the Toronto Raptors when Kyle Lowry and DeRozan were winning those games and having the best record in the Eastern Conference? They ran into LeBron James. They ran into LeBron James, and they ran into a hungry LeBron James that wasn't going to be denied because he wanted to deliver a championship to Cleveland. All I'm saying is that I'm not picking the Heat to come out of the Eastern Conference. I'm saying that they are a threat when you add Kyle Lowry. And I also think that Jimmy Butler and Bam last year, they just looked tired and defeated from the long playoff run that they had the year before, going to the finals, and then coming back and having the season that they had.
And I'm saying now they run into a person that I watched you this morning remind the world is now the face of the NBA.
Are we talking Giannis?
Yes. That was Kendrick Perkins' words. Well, that was not mine, because I don't agree with that.
That's where I was going to go next. And by the way, we will talk later in the show because Giannis chimed in on whether he's the face of the NBA or not. So we'll get to that. But it is interesting in the East. You've got, of course, the defending champions. Respect to them. And certainly Giannis wants more than one. He's already talked about that. You've got Philadelphia, which is going to make a serious effort to retool. We know that they're shopping Ben Simmons. We don't know who they're going to come back with. You've got the Brooklyn Nets. I almost said New Jersey, Stephen. I had to catch myself, but we spent so much time in that Northeast corridor. The Brooklyn Nets, who of course are returning their big three and feel that they are contenders for the title. Miami trying to nose its way in there. So much, though, in this free agency period can depend on Kyle Lowry, even if, as you say, the balance of power isn't shifting as much. Bobby Marks made this chart, which was amazing. This was in a conference room in Bristol that he made for himself. And he was just like, from Kyle Lowry, all of these things flow. So we won't really know what the balance of of power is, even until Kyle Lowry, even if he signs with Miami as we expect, if that sign and trade works out as we expect, there's all these other dominoes. 17. Stephen A., would you like to see Knicks and Melo reunion?
No. Because the New York Knicks are not in a position where they're going to win a championship. Yep. And I love Carmelo Anthony. Mm-hmm. And as much as I love my New York Knicks, it is that time. The Banana Boat crew. LeBron's got 4. D-Wade's got 3. Chris Paul was just in the finals. There's one guy of the crew that's never played in the NBA finals. That's LeBron. That's Carmelo Anthony. I want Carmelo Anthony in L.A. with LeBron.
Yeah, I think he needs a chance to win. You know, who knows how much time he has left. And for every reason he just mentioned, I would love to see him go out with the ring.
Do you feel like that makes them more of a contender if Melo joins LA?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because they need shooters.
Right.
And he shot 40% for three-point range last season.
They certainly
Good problem
do.
to have.
Yeah, just in case anyone forgot.
But the year before, he averaged 20 and 6. We can't forget that. He can ball, and obviously he's looking for a better situation than he would have in Brooklyn because the big 3 is there. Secondly, do not give, and I don't like messing with people's money. I truly, truly do not. I want everybody to get paid.
Yep.
But Julius Randle is not a number 1 option.
Okay.
You want to give him a max, but it can't be an exorbitant max. The max now at about 106 to 110, that's where he got to be. About 25, 28 million a year. That's about right, okay? So let's make sure we do that. Outside of that, all you could do is pray, man. I mean, listen. Mitchell Robinson's coming back. Listen, Mitchell Robinson is going to be back. You got to re-up him. You got to re-up Julius Randle. If you can pull it off, you go out there and you get somebody like a Spencer Dinwiddie. You retain Derrick Rose.
Yeah, okay.
You retain Derrick Rose. And the only way you throw everything out is if Damian Lillard says, I want out of Portland, because I'm here to tell you. If Damian Lillard wants out of Portland, and I'm not sure he does yet, his number 1 choice is going to be the New York Knicks.
Ooh. Really?
Heard it right here.
Ooh, inside scoop.
His number 1 choice is going to be the New York Knicks. Now, not over Portland. He's trying to stay there if it can work out. But if he decides to leave, I'm betting the house. It's the New York Knicks that he'll want to go to. Now, if you're the New York Knicks.
Couple houses.
Where's the camera?
Steve, there you go.
Leon Rose, Worldwide West, William Wesley, Scott Perry, Tom Thibodeau. I don't want to hear cap space and picks. You give Portland what the hell they asked for if Damian Lillard is available to come. And I don't know if he's going to do that. I don't know if he's going to demand that. I don't know if Neil O'Shea is going to capitulate.
Right.
But if that possibility is there, Leon Rose, Worldwide West, Scott Perry, Tom Thibodeau, you do what you got to do to get Damian.
Well, I'm going to ask you one question about, though, because your New York Knicks gave up a lot of the farm for Carmelo Anthony, remember, when it's possible they could have gotten him down the road in free agency, but they wanted to make sure they got him, and they gave up assets for him, and it made it a little harder for them and Melo to win. Right. So do you think that they should do the same if a Damian Lillard deal
But remember, one of the problems that they existed, they didn't have the cap space.
Yes.
So it was picks with no cap space.
Yes.
You got cap space now. You just be giving up some picks. Well, what the hell are you giving up picks for? To compete.
Yeah.
And so here
players,
you are in the first round.
You want them to give up players
and
too.
LeBron and Miami and then win the Eastern Conference. You had Melo. Amari couldn't be healthy.
Yep.
You know, so that's what happened. This particular situation, you're going to have to give up a lot to get a Damian Lillard if it comes to that, and I'm not sure it will. But my Lord, at 31, 32 years of age, the closing ability, nobody has hit more clutch shots. A point guard who can shoot like that in today's NBA game at Madison Square Garden. No, you do that. You do that.
Well, I don't want to take you off the Damian Lillard train, but I have to say, assuming that doesn't happen today.
No, it's not going to happen.
Or in the next couple days, what do you think about him saying, don't give the farm to Julius Randle?
Dame time in the Garden could be incredible.
It's hard to not think about that.
You know what's weird to me? I like Julius Randle. I agree. I think he's a great A-, maybe second option. And that's with all due respect. What's crazy to me is, you know, this team hasn't been very good for such a long time. And in previous years, you always hear a bunch of people, okay, we're going to go to the Knicks. Now that they've actually made the playoffs and starting to head in the right direction with Tom Thibodeau, you don't hear any stars trying to get to New York. So that's kind of interesting to me. But I think this may be a situation where they're going to have to get second-tier free agents, you know, the second waiver free agents of Spencer Dinwiddie, some of these guys, and build with small pieces and continue to compete until maybe something happens where a superstar does want to come. So I don't really see a superstar making that jump outside of Dame. You know, Stephen A's betting all his houses on it. But outside of that, like I said, I think it's going to be small pieces here and there. Nothing that's really going to, make a huge splash, but small pieces continue to get better until to that one moment where they can go get a superstar.
We 100% agree. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You do those things.
Yeah, but you're just saying
I'm not saying Damian Lillard's going to want to leave Portland. But if he wants to leave Portland, it's going to be the Knicks. And by the way, who ain't coming to New York to play with Damian
Absolutely.
Lillard?
I mean,
Absolutely.
Who ain't coming to New York to play with Damian Lillard? I ain't going to mention any names yet. But let me tell you something. I got about 5 of them. Who ain't going to come to New York to play with Damian Lillard?
It'll take that one domino, though. It'll take that first
I'm getting a little sweaty right now because I'm getting all excited. Just, oh, my Lord. Oh.
Can you feel, Stephen A., all the way from Houston, just this mere possibility of maybe, possibly?
Hey, Perk, that shirt brings your eyes out, by the way.
Well, Rachel, look, I had...
Yeah, those eyebrows. Yeah,
I appreciate it, man.
You know, let the man talk about basketball.
Well, actually,
it's true, man. It's true.
Look. I'm telling you. Listen to this though. Damian Lillard to the Knicks helped the Knicks and the New York Knicks fan base, but it don't help Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard should be trying to go somewhere that could help him actually win a title. Now, Damian Lillard in Madison Square Garden, I agree, Stephen A. and Max is must see TV. But when you talk about the New York Knicks, right? You got Julius Randle, you have Derrick Rose, you have R.J. Barrett, and I agree with your point, Stephen A. Add a Spencer Dinwiddie, or maybe add a DeMar DeRozan to the mix. You continue to have your player development. You go get a Spencer Dinwiddie, a guy that actually could play off the ball, that you could play alongside Derrick Rose because he's a big guard, right? So he's a combo guard that can space the floor. He's great moving off the ball. He's a great defender, so he fits the culture of the New York Knicks. I just don't know if I'm a Knicks, if I'm in the front office of the New York Knicks, I give up so much to get Dame Lillard. And then what if you don't hit a home run and attract more superstars? Now you done gave up a lot of your young pieces to get Dame Lillard when he's standing in Madison Square Garden by himself with just you and Spike Lee.
I feel you on that, but let's pump the brakes here for a second.
I was going to say, the poor Portland fans are like, he hasn't gone anywhere yet. He hasn't asked for a trade.
I understand that, and I totally get it, but we're allowed to fantasize. We're allowed to fantasize. We in Tinseltown. This is Land's dream. Okay, that's what we're doing here. That's what we're doing here, okay? And what I'm saying to you is this. Let's put the Knicks in its proper perspective.
Okay.
When you talk about young pieces, yeah, R.J. Barrett can ball, but he's not ambidextrous. Julius Randle could ball, but he's not ambidextrous. You had the Atlanta Hawks screaming, they're going left.
Yes.
They're going left. And where did they go? Left. Every time. So let's not act like the New York Knicks have stuff you simply can't give up. Oh, my God, you can't afford to do it. Certainly, if you can't get a mega star, then you build with what you have. But we also got to understand Brooklyn's right in town, all right? Less than 10 miles away. They got a big three. We all know if Kyrie Irving was healthy, okay, something different might have happened, all right? So we understand that. And if you're the New York Knicks and you could put yourself in a position to compete box office-wise in terms of attracting folks, that's something you can't ignore.
Well, look, we saw the crowd outside the Garden with this lineup, with the group that they had. So I think the people of New York, and Stephen A., you know better than me, they are just waiting. They are waiting for a competitive team. And the fact that they made the playoffs.
Why don't you tell the truth, Rachel? You've been laughing at me for years.
I know.
You and Will Bond have been laughing at me for years because of my Knick, how my Knick fandom.
I would say that we've been laughing near you, not at you. And
it's okay.
The laughter has been at the way the organization had been run, which I know you agree with me on, and that how it has been run so much better. Before we let you go, and Stephen A., I know you have to bolt, but campaign is another name that I've heard, and obviously had a bit of a revival in Phoenix.
I like campaign.
If it turns out that way.
I will tell you that he disappeared after game 2 against the Clippers when he dropped 37. Okay, I'm 29. I'm sorry, 29 and 9 and 37 minutes. He wasn't that person the rest of the playoffs, but he can play. I like his aggression. I like his passion. I like the counseling that he's received from CP3. My personal preference would be, however, a Spencer Dinwiddie. over that.
It's going to be small pieces. Like, you're going to have to crawl before you can walk in this situation.
We've been crawling for
a long time.
Almost 50 years. You know that, right?
But you guys are going to get up and run one of these days. But like I say, it's going to be small pieces until you get your chance for that.
It's almost a half century we've been crawling. I'm just saying, y'all.
Unrestricted free agent.
How shocked? What's the shock scale? Like
0 to 10.
10 being really shocked. Like my shocked face would be like that. Really
so like
shocked.
12?
Look, Kawhi has there's this like information vacuum that happens with Kawhi, right? Because he's so mysterious, he doesn't say anything. His confidants are very, tight-lipped and whatever. So rumors sprout up. I haven't heard one credible, actionable thing to suggest he's leaving. So I'm just assuming in the absence of that he's going to stay, and I would be very, very shocked if he left, which is great news for the Clippers.
Yeah, I think this is just optics and in a strong arm business move. You're coming off an ACL surgery. You're going to sign he's going to want money.
Yep.
You want to be secure. But I definitely don't see Kawhi going anywhere. And knowing Kawhi in his past, how he waits until he's 100% healthy, I wouldn't be surprised if he sat out the entire season to make sure that he's completely healthy for the 2023 or the 23 season. So.
Well, look, we just saw what happened to Klay Thompson, right? He had an ACL injury, and Klay wants to come back. Well, he was at a rec league right here in L.A. He was just working out. I don't know if it wasn't actually LA Fitness. It felt like LA Fitness. And, that's where he messed up the Achilles. So you do want to be careful about that. Our friend Clipper Darrell, who has been watching, saw us tease this topic prior to the break, does not like us to talk about Kawhi leaving. Tweeted over there, do not put that into the atmosphere. Again, I hope, Clipper Darrell, you feel better now that you've heard Zach and Matt say they don't think it is going to happen. But it is interesting, Matt, Kawhi looking at a range of options here because he's unrestricted at this point. He could sign for any length of time with the Clippers, and the Clippers have to judge, too, how much they want to have Kawhi on their books for. What do you think is the smart move here, considering his injury history?
It's tough. It's a tough call in the Clippers' hand, and fortunately, I think it's going to be in what Kawhi wants to do. I mean, obviously, the Clippers are going to want to do what's more strategic for them and their cap space moving forward, but it's really going to be what Kawhi wants to do. So is he going to go the LeBron route, the 1+1, or those situations? But again, someone with an injury-filled past, and he's not getting any younger. So, obviously an ACL is a major industry. Normally when you come back, you have a few tweaks and pulls when you first come back. So you want to err on the side of caution. But again, he's a top 5 player in this league, and he's going to do what he wants. But as long as he stays with the Clippers, I'm sure their fan base is going to be really happy. I
want to bring Jackie McMullen in on that as well. Jackie, welcome. We're so thrilled to have you here. What do you think is the best move? Because Kawhi, if he does re-sign with the Clippers, we assume he's going to be pushing for 4 or 5 years. Do you feel that, look, they traded so much to get him and Paul George there, they're going to have to just do whatever he wants? Or do you feel there can be some bargaining here in years or sort of salary there?
Rachel, this is no time to bail on Kawhi Leonard, and I think the Clippers know that. As you said, the King's ransom that they paid to get both him and Paul George aboard, and when he's healthy, he's a game changer. Sure. And he's a 2-time champion with 2 different teams. And the Clippers have done, from their end, everything you could possibly want if you're Kawhi Leonard. They've let him bring in his own health professionals. They'd have let him commute from San Diego at certain points. They have let him not answer to the media last season when he was rehabbing his knee and had some issues there. So the Clippers have held up their end. And now Kawhi, I think he's going to hold up his end. It's unfinished business there for both of them. They've got to come to an agreement. I think both sides understand that. God bless America, though, that you can opt out of a $36 million contract with a torn ACL and know you're going to make more money on a multi-year deal.
I mean, wow. It's incredible. And there's players we've seen like this. Kevin Durant, of course, had the Achilles injury and signed that max deal. And Kawhi Leonard, if anyone had any questions, and they should not have, of his worth, what he did for the Clippers at certain points during this playoffs, I mean, Zach, it was just overwhelming at times, right?
Seems like a long time ago, but some of those games against Dallas were all-time games. That's
come to fruition.
I think it's different for everyone. Obviously, I was never someone who got a huge deal, but obviously it's a fun time, and I think free agency has made the NBA continue to grow because we attract headlines even in the offseason.
We're doing 5 hours of television today, although I'm interested in your position, though, because you were someone waiting for a domino to domino, and that might impact you. We've got a lot of guys like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, I mean,
Joe Lacob. These are courtesy of The Athletic. Quote, "It is very unlikely," Joe Lacob says, "I've said that we're not going to trade for anybody that people are expecting. Very unlikely not impossible. But if it was going to be somebody, it was going to be somebody really great. It's going to be a big trade, but that is, again, unlikely. So, as that relates to Steph Curry, if he extends his deal with the Warriors this summer, which he has the opportunity to do, he can re-sign for 4 years, $215 million.
Oh, my.
Now, by the way, he could just not sign an extension. He could let it sit. But that means that he would then become a free agent the next summer, and that other teams could offer him 4 years, $207 million. So there actually is not, in this case, huge financial incentive to stay with the Warriors or sign that extension. But there is a lot of emotional incentive. Mark, we know that Steph Curry, that tie he has to that organization, how proud he is of the core that they have there. Do you expect him to sign the extension this summer, or keep them a little bit on pins and needles to see what they do over the next year, even if he does intend to stay?
I expect him to sign it, and I think Matt remembers when Steph had these ankle issues early in his career, and people wondered if he'd ever get to that place where he's special. Well, now he's on the opposite side of his career, and you see guys get hurt. Special. I just can't see him turning that much money down. I know he loves it there. The Bay lives and breathes him. He's like second to Jesus in the Bay.
I would say it's almost
I was about to say, he might be tied with Jesus in the Bay.
Yeah, I don't see him turning that down. I see him finishing his career being very wealthy in the Bay Area.
I mean, Matt, you were a teammate of his during some of those times in Golden State. They were a little harder. You think no matter what the Warriors do, he's signing that extension?
Yeah, I mean, I think Steph Curry will be a lifer in Golden State, and I think if he had his way, Clay would also be a lifer in Golden State. So I definitely don't see him sitting or waiting. Obviously, it's going to be a poker play, but, you know, at the end of the day, he is, you know, someone who's changed the game of basketball and brought championships to that town. He's one of these guys that you'll see, like a Kobe. He'll be in one uniform for his entire life. So that's the way I feel personally.
And Perk, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about this, right? Because Matt Barnes mentioned earlier in the last segment about how LeBron at one point in his tenure in Cleveland kept signing 1-and-1s to keep putting pressure on the Cavaliers front office. We certainly saw Kevin Durant when he was in Golden State sign 1-and-1s. So if Steph Curry decides not to go that route, if he signs that 4-year extension, what else can he do, Perk, from a player's perspective to keep that pressure on the front office, to get a player in there who's more on his timeline, who's ready to win a championship now, as opposed to some of the younger guys they brought in the last 12 months?
Well, I mean, to me, he just got to continue to be Steph Curry, and that's been the most, far as hybrid point guard that we've seen in a long time, best shooter in the game. Here it is, Rachel, right? When you look at this Golden State Warrior team, right now, with Clay coming back, this team, to me, is a top 3 team in the Western Conference with Steph Curry fully healthy, with Draymond Green, with Andrew Wiggins, right? The emergence of Andrew Wiggins. I always said that Andrew Wiggins will be a perfect fit with this Golden State team, being a third option guy. He showed us that last year. He started to become one of the best two-way players in the game. The way he was locking in defensively at the wing position, he was delivering, around 18 points a night. So I'm looking at this team, the makeup of this team, and they drafted well. I'm like, look, you got the Lakers, you have the Utah Jazz that are healthy, you got the Suns, and then you got the Golden State Warriors that are right there. So at the end of the day, to me, I'm looking with a healthy Clay coming back, with him getting back in rhythm. You still got to watch out for the Golden State Warriors. They don't have to make a big move.
I like to add a little bit to that, too, and I think, Rachel, your question was, what does he have to do to continue to apply pressure to that front office? I don't think he has to do anything compared, like Mark said, where he came from. There was a lot of, do we really want to build around him? He proved that they made the right decision. And I think they have a great understanding they know that their window rides on Steph Curry's shoulders. So I think that front office is going to stay active. It may not be a big splash this year, but they're always looking to improve that team, whether it be a star or adding more depth to that bench, because that was a secret weapon to that team. Obviously, those starting fives were great, but they had great depth on that bench. So I don't really think Steph has to do anything besides be himself, be great, stay healthy. And that front office is right there, respecting him enough, knowing that, our window rides with Steph Curry.
Yeah, and look, everyone knows Bob Myers wants to win. So It's not like he needs some incentive.
Spend money there.